And if I could ask everybody to make sure that you're on mute, that's good. Stay on mute until I tell you otherwise, except for you, Rachel. We are going to take a picture. Again, I know this is like, some of you don't like to have your pictures taken, but you're just going to have to deal with it. We will be taking at least one more picture during this discussion. And again, if you have any questions for our speaker or for any of the teachers, we'll hold off on the questions to the end. Write them in the chat box. If you have any that you would like me to ask, I'm going to kind of moderate a little bit and say who can ask what questions. Put your hand up. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute here. We have these, don't we? I have a question. So we can use that. I don't want to see too many of these. I have an idea, but I'm sure that our speaker wouldn't mind seeing a few of these. Okay. So when we hit that topic, make sure that you do the socially correct thing. I would like everybody to, we're going to take another picture, at least one. So please, if you would like to be in the picture, if you don't want to be in the picture, that's okay. We'd love to see your smiling face, however. And I think I may be able to manage. Okay. Now go back there. Find that. There we go. Yay. Isn't technology wonderful? So I'm assuming at this point in time, if your beautiful face is not looking at my face, you don't want to see us. And once we get our speaker rocking and rolling, I will appoint a couple of co-hosts in here to help me with things like admitting people. So that will be helpful. We're going to take a picture at the beginning here. So if you would like to be included in the picture, please start your video. If you do not want to be included, do not start your video. And we all understand, some of us are having worse bad hair days than others. I guess I'll start mine too. Okay. All right, I'm snapping. Smile, everybody. Good job. Okay. So today we have how many of you watched the video? This of Rachel Wilson, the cybersecurity, the super spy, the spy mom, our wonderful speaker from Morgan Stanley, who's going to talk to us a little bit about cybersecurity. And I told her that we have a lot of people from the morning session who maybe have had about their fill of technical stuff at this point in time. And we also have some other people from the afternoon session, because this will be kickstarting them. So they haven't had all of the technical experience that everybody else has had. But I'm happy to welcome Rachel Wilson. So take it away, Rachel. And if you would all please, you can go on you can stay on video if you want, but go on mute. And I'm going to stop my video because sometimes it's a little distracting if my dogs are walking in and out of my back room.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to all of you lovely young women this morning. As you either continue or embark on your career as technologists. And I do hope that part of what comes out of our conversation today is that maybe some of you want to join me in the cybersecurity space, where I've spent the last 20 years of my career now. So as background, I graduated from.
Hang on a second. I'm going to ask one. Oh, now I lost it. I went into it and then I forgot. Oh, I am so sorry, Rachel.
No problem at all. When it comes to you, let me know.
No,
it happens to me all the time.
I know. Oh, it happens more and more frequently. So it will come to mind. And check your chat. I'll put it in the chat when it comes to my mind, everybody.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
So in essence, I'm Rachel Wilson, 20 years as a cybersecurity expert now, and I spent the first 15 years of my career actually working for the National Security Agency. And for those of you who don't know what the NSA does, they're actually one of the country's largest employers of computer scientists and mathematicians, and it's because they have a really interesting mission. They get to do two things at the National Security Agency. First, they get to defend the highest consequence systems and networks in the United States. So think the White House, the Pentagon, all of our State Department, military troops around the world, our intelligence community, all of the systems and networks and applications that those entities run. The NSA has the responsibility to make sure that those are all as protected and hardened as possible, because as you all would appreciate, right, those are the kinds of systems that our adversaries would love to be listening to. The other half of the NSA's mission, and the part that I spent the large predominance of my career in, though, is actually on the offensive side. So think of this as really going into the networks of our adversaries, terrorists, drug smugglers, human traffickers, all of these baddie types all over the world, getting onto their devices, listening to their communications, all with the goal of thwarting their evil plans or helping our policymakers with their negotiations. So in my 15 years at the NSA, all as a technologist, I spent a couple of years running the NSA's counterterrorism operations mission. So think of this as getting onto the cell phone, the laptop, the tablet used by a terrorist somewhere in the world, reading their email, listening to their phone calls, geolocating their device, all with the goal of preventing their terrorist plot and saving lives, both in the United States and overseas. That was, as you can imagine, a really stressful job, but incredibly rewarding. Then as a reward, I got to spend a couple of years actually working out of the American Embassy in London. So part of the American contingent, part of the diplomatic mission in the UK. And that job was all about getting the British ready for the 2012 Summer Olympics. So as all of you would expect, for something like the Olympics, there is a large number of terrorist plots towards those, but that's actually not why I and my team of Americans were on site. We were there really to deal with the cyber threats to those Olympics. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think, right, that the Olympics would be a target for cyber actors, but they absolutely were. So remember, the Chinese had just had their very successful Olympics in Beijing, and they were certainly looking to rub a little bit of grit in the eyes of the British. So we saw them trying to hack into the clocks, the timers at the Olympic venues. We saw the Russians trying to hack into the databases that housed all of the Olympic drug testing records. So we know that the Russians were, the whole doping scandal and giving their athletes drugs that they shouldn't have received. They were trying to manipulate those on the back end in the databases, and just all kinds of miscreants, again, looking to just create problems for those Olympics. So I spent 2.5 years making sure that every Olympic venue was as hacker-proofed as possible. And then after the games were over, I went back to suburban Maryland, where the NSA is headquartered. And I spent my last 5 years at the agency in what I would tell you girls was my dream job. So this was the job that I had wanted from the day that I started at the NSA. And when I tell you about it, I hope it's a job that all of you want to, because I can't imagine a cooler job to this day. And this was running the NSA's cyber exploitation operations mission, which sounds like a lot of big words, But really what this is America's nation state hackers. So our professional hackers, we would hire the best computer scientists and computer engineers we could find around the country. We would give them 18 months of highly classified training, teach them how to use all these really cool hacker tools and techniques. And then we would conduct hundreds of operations a day, hacking into the networks of the Iranians, the North Koreans, the Russians, the Chinese, stealing the secrets out of their networks, giving them to our policymakers, our war fighters, again, all with the goal of protecting the United States and her allies. Why was this a dream job for me? Well, I can tell you as a technologist, I loved it because we got to work pretty much every technology on the planet, including a bunch of technologies that you can't even buy in the United States. We would have to have them diplomatically pouched in from other countries. So think of this as, you know, firewalls, right? Built by the Iranians, indigenous Iranian firewalls that we would bring in and reverse engineer and understand. Windows versions. So of course, you know, you can't buy Microsoft Windows all over the world. So you find these pirated, cracked versions of Windows that we would then have to reverse engineer and become experts in. And so as a technologist, full stack from the worst little cell phone you could imagine, all the way through to routers and switches, you know, the size of my office here at Morgan Stanley. Also a dream job for me because I got to lead a team of incredibly talented men and women, again, top technologists from around the country, in doing this mission that for us was truly profound. So what we brought back when we did our hacking missions, we called it eye-watering intelligence, by which I mean information that was so remarkable that when you thought about the fact that you were going to put it on the president's desk the next morning, brought a little tear to your eye. All of you probably can tell I'm incredibly proud of the work that I did in my 15 years at the NSA. I remain incredibly proud of the work that my colleagues continue to do at the NSA and in government. Those were absolutely glorious years that I will look back on fondly. One thing to know, should any of you pursue a government path though, is that the government doesn't let you stay in the same job forever. So every year they would come to me and say, Rachel, what do you want to do next? And I would say, just leave me here, queen of the hackers forever. I am the happiest person at the NSA. And after 5 years, they wanted me to go do a policy job, which as probably won't surprise you, for me as a technologist and as an operations person, right, not interested in doing a policy job. And so at that point, and all of you will reach this inflection point in your careers, I decided it was time for me to try something different. Now, of course, I wanted to stay in cybersecurity because that's my heart. That's where I've wanted to be my entire career. If you talk to Rachel as a little girl, she would tell you that this is what she wanted to do, even though we didn't even have the word cybersecurity then. I didn't want to leave the cybersecurity space. And so I got a phone call from a man who had been a mentor, a sponsor of mine for many years. And all of you young women will have these people in your lives. As your academic and then working careers develop, you will find these people who will recognize the talent in you, what makes you special, and they will help cultivate you throughout your career. I've had plenty of women who have helped me through my career, and this man, again, had been a tremendous force for good as a mentor and a sponsor. He had, a few years prior, retired from the NSA after a 32-year career of saving lives and doing amazing things for the US government. And he had come to Morgan Stanley as the first head of cybersecurity for Morgan Stanley. So responsible for cybersecurity for the entire firm all around the world. And he called me after about 6 months and said, Rachel, you know, I know you're a lifer in government. I know you have no interest in leaving, but if you ever think you might, I think you'd be really impressed with what you found here. And so, you know, I didn't give it much thought until they wanted me to do this policy job. And then I called him up and said, you know, I probably don't want to come to New York, right? I probably don't want to work for an investment bank. That was never in my plan, but I'm willing to come up for a day or two. And I have to tell you, I was so impressed at the technologists that I met here and at the conviction around cybersecurity. And so this is actually where, as young women, I would like to pose a question to all of you as we move forward. So at Morgan Stanley, I can tell you we're spending about $400 million a year on cybersecurity technology, which think about what a number that is. So as a firm, we're spending about $4 billion on technology, and a full 10% of that is just on cybersecurity. We've got almost 600 full-time people who do nothing but cybersecurity and data protection. Now, what does that tell you? Well, I hope first and foremost it tells you that, again, cybersecurity is a great place to be going career-wise right now, because I can't hire people fast enough in this space. You want job security, this is the field to be in right now. But also because this is just, it's a dynamic place to be. So when I tell you that a bank like Morgan Stanley is spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year and has hundreds of full-time people who are doing nothing but this, what do you girls think I'm worried about? What are the sources of my sleepless nights as a head of cybersecurity? What kind of entity would want to hack a bank? Who has a thought on this?
The government?
Isabella, I love that answer. So I will tell you, the United States government is not interested in hacking banks. But foreign governments, you're absolutely right that there are some foreign governments that I would be concerned about. Does anyone have a guess as to maybe what kind of foreign government would be interested in hacking a bank?
North Korea?
Jessica, you nailed it. North Korea, absolutely the greatest source for me of sleepless nights in the last 3.5 years in this job. Why? I think you already know the answer, but for the group, North Korea, of course, is up against all of these international sanctions. They really don't have any domestic economy, and yet, as we know, they're trying to fund a very expensive missile and nuclear program. So how are they doing this? How is North Korea funding its government in 2020? Well, they've essentially made it a plank of their national strategy that they're going to fund their government by hacking into banks and stealing money, right? You guys have always heard the old adage, right? Why rob banks? Well, it's where the money is. If you're North Korea and you need money, hacking banks would be the most lucrative source. And so absolutely, for the last few years, the North Koreans have built up a huge bank hacking apparatus. About 7,000 people now in North Korea have bank hacking as their full-time job. And what's interesting for all of you as young women is that those ranks continue to grow because the North Koreans are actively conscripting their best and brightest children to join these bank hacking forces. So if any of you were growing up in North Korea, at the age of 11, you would have taken an aptitude test. If you had scored best and brightest on that North Korean aptitude test, you would have been immediately on-ramped into the bank hacking program. These kids are taken away from their families. They're raised to be bank hackers in the hacking culture from the age of 11. 7,000 of them now, and every year more. What's also unfortunate is that the North Koreans haven't just resourced this strategy very heavily, but they're also really good at this. Again, it's existential for them. It's core to their strategy. So some of you, and maybe someone wants to take this back as a homework assignment because I will get very excited about this, but we don't have enough time to talk all of this through. But look up the Bank of Bangladesh heist. So this heist, a few years back, the North Koreans successfully hacked into the Central Bank of Bangladesh and they carted off close to $100 million. Big chunk of money. What people don't know about this heist, though, is that the North Koreans were a typographical error, literally a spelling mistake away from that being close to $1 billion. Huge amounts of money, and again, not a one-off. So the United Nations last year published a report supporting the allegations of 17 different countries around the world, all of whom are asserting that the North Koreans have hacked some aspect of their central bank over the last 3 years to the tune of more than $3 billion. So lots to be worried about there. What other nation states might I be worried about in terms of coming after a bank with a hack?
Maybe Russia?
So I would tell you, certainly, Sophie, there are days that I worry about Russia. The Russians have an interesting strategy. You guys have all seen what they've done around attempting to manipulate the elections and all of the misinformation and disinformation they've got out there. Certainly, we've seen them really busy around the whole coronavirus pandemic. They're putting out all kinds of disinformation on social media, talking about what's happening and what's not happening. Some of it is downright ludicrous, I would tell you. So some of you probably have seen the disinformation that the Russians are promulgating around 5G cellular towers. So these are the most modern cellular towers. The Russians are saying that the cellular towers are spreading the virus. Now, obviously, that's crazy, right? But so many people have heard that message that we've now seen dozens of instances around the world where people are burning down their local cell tower thinking that this is going to somehow protect them from the spread. This is the craziness that we see coming from the Russians. Anyone with a last idea on another nation state I might worry about? Kate, it looks like you have a thought.
I don't.
Anushka has an idea.
Anushka, you have a thought. Let's hear it.
Maybe China?
So China, we certainly worry about. You know, China is interested in amassing a whole bunch of information about all of us and trying to put the pieces of our lives together. I'm sure some of you are TikTok followers, right? So you've seen all the recent controversy around TikTok. So certainly China we worry about, but I'll give you the last answer. My second biggest source of sleepless nights in this job from a nation state perspective is actually Iran. Why? Iran, interesting. Oh, Anushka's losing her mind here. Yes.
Maybe it's because Iran is kind of poor and it's kind of like North Korea to fuel most of their like attacks on different countries. They need to hack banks because they don't have that much economy.
So Anushka, you've nailed it. So it's a slight nuance. So the North Koreans, right, they're trying to steal money because they want to build weapons, right? In the case of the Iranians, you're exactly right that the issue is really they're using cyber as the weapon, because what they've learned is that, you know, building an aircraft carrier is a 10-year project. Building a nuclear weapon is really expensive and really difficult to do, but cyber represents an asymmetric threat. So instead of building really expensive weapons, what the Iranians have done is really put 40 people in the basement of a building in Tehran, and they've managed to wreak havoc on Wall Street. So if you go back to the 2012-2014 timeframe, when we and the Iranians had a very rough relationship, this is exactly what the Iranians were doing. They were going literally from bank to bank to bank on Wall Street, conducting what we call distributed denial of service attacks, right? Where they essentially prevent you from doing your business by bombarding you with far more packets than you could ever accept. And essentially, you know, shutting down websites, doing all kinds of damage to America's financial sector, all essentially free, right? So if you're a poor country and you want to wage war, cyber means can be a great way of doing that in a cost-effective way. So yes, you are not kidding. We've got some very, very smart young women. You guys have absolutely nailed this. I want to share a little bit more with you in terms of the things that I deal with and worry about in this job on a daily basis. So we talked about nation states, but I would tell you that if you went back in time 10 years ago, vast majority of malicious cyber activity that you would see on the internet would have been nation states conducting espionage. Now that's changed. Actually, 70% of the malicious cyber activity we see on the internet today is criminal, and it's financially motivated. It's not about stealing secrets, it's about stealing money, and it really is coming from organized crime groups. So if you guys think about the mob, you know, the mafia going back in time when they had lots of different things to do to raise money, organized crime today is really all cyber crime. It's cyber enabled. And so you see hackers all over the world that work for these organized crime groups and are conducting these kinds of criminal activities. And what's funny, Anushka, you're gonna love this, that these cyber criminals, the activity that we see them conducting, it looks a lot like the kinds of things that we see from North Korea, which really confused us until we thought for a moment about how much those North Korean government hackers are getting paid, right? Next to nothing, pittance. There's no money in North Korean government hacking. These guys and gals are getting paid next to nothing. But there is a benefit, right? There's a benny to being that North Korean government hacker, and it's that you get to take your cyber toolkit home with you nights and weekends, and you get to use it for your own personal betterment. And that's what we see, not just in North Korea, but in Russia, China, all across Eastern Europe, hackers that work for their government by day, and then take that toolkit home nights and weekends, and they're using it for one of these cyber criminal groups to make money for themselves and for their organized crime group. And so the tradecraft, the tactics that we see from these hackers, it can be really difficult to tell what is a nation state and what is a criminal. From my perspective, I don't much care. They're all bad. They're all things that we've got to defend ourselves. And of course, I have to defend our clients from, but lots and lots of high-end cyber activity there. So these organized crime groups, what kinds of activities might they be conducting? I'll tell you, the most frequent form of attack that we experience is what is called a credential validation attack. And I'm going to describe what I mean by this. So this is simply where a hacking group takes a whole bunch of logins and passwords and throws them against your authentication gateway to see what sticks. So imagine how this would go. Cyber criminal goes out to the dark web. You all know that's just the part of the internet that's not indexed. You can't get there through a Google search. Go out to the dark web and buy maybe the 1 million most frequently used passwords, right? These are terrible passwords that none of us should be using, right? Password 1, password. Was working with one of our clients this morning who admitted to me that she's been using kittens25 as her password for all of her logins for the last decade. And last week, in an abundance of caution, she added an exclamation point to kittens25, and now she thinks she's good for the next decade. Not a good plan, right? We all know, we can talk about this more, that the most important thing we can be doing to keep ourselves safe is using unique, complex passwords for all of our logins, not the same or similar password again and again. But these hackers know that many of us are using kittens25 again and again. And so if they go to the dark web and they see that your email address was associated with this password in multiple other breaches, they've got a reason to believe that maybe you're using that password at your bank as well. And so they're going to take those 1 million most commonly used passwords along with your email addresses, and they're again going to throw them against your bank's front door. Now, we're talking about millions and millions of passwords. It would take forever if these hackers were able to, fat fingering in all of these logins and passwords. They'd be typing for the rest of their lives. So what do they do to speed up the process? What we see them do is go back to the dark web and rent a botnet. Now, by a botnet, I simply mean, thousands of highly hackable endpoint devices all over the world. These are frequently your Internet of Things devices, your smart TV, maybe your smart toaster, all of these things with manufacturer default credentials, where I, as the hacker, can very easily script up an attack and have all of these devices do my bidding simultaneously. And that's what we see. Thousands of devices throwing millions of credential pairs against an authentication gateway. Now, the botnet is not smart. This is just a script. All the botnet returns is a simple thumbs up, thumbs down. Vast majority of cases, going to be a thumbs down, right? This login and password do not work for any customer of this bank. But for that small but non-zero percentage that return a thumbs up, what do you think we see next? We see that hacker coming in and logging into that account, setting up bill payments, money movements, all the kinds of things that you would do if a hacker got access to your login and password. Now, of course, the moral of the story here is, as we discussed, that we should be making sure we're using unique passwords for all of our logins, but it's also making sure that we leverage strong authentication. And I want to pause a minute to talk about authentication, because from a cybersecurity perspective, there are few concepts more important when we think about protecting ourselves and protecting those that we bear responsibility for protection. When we talk about authentication, all forms of authentication fall into one of three bins. The first bin, something that you know. So these are secrets, right? This is your password, it's your social security number, your mother's maiden name, all of these sort of secret things that you have to remember. That's something that you know. Then there's the second form, which is something that you have. So maybe this is your smartphone, maybe this is your computer. This is why a lot of sites will ask you to register your device as trusted, or you've probably seen, if you have a Gmail account and you log in from a computer that you've never logged in from before, what does Google notice, right? This is a different device. They're looking at your device as part of your identity, part of how they are authenticating you. Then there's the third form of authentication, my personal favorite, right? This is where biometrics come into play. This is something that you are. So this is your fingerprint, this is your face if you use Face ID, it's voice recognition technology, retinal scans. Great way of authenticating yourself. But the important thing is that we never want to be relying on simply one form of authentication as we're logging into anything sensitive. And I'm insistent in this with my clients as well. We don't allow anybody to move money or access any sensitive information with simply a login and password. They must be coming from a device that they've declared as trusted, and or using a biometric authenticator so that I can be sure that it's truly that client on the other end of that communication. So I would encourage you guys to be protecting your email accounts and your social media accounts with two-factor, multi-factor authentication, and again, never simply using an email address and password as the way of protecting yourselves. All right, the last kind of attack that I want to describe for all of you this afternoon, is the risk around mobile malware. So this is malicious software that's going after the mobile apps on our phone, trying to get access to us that way. The piece of malware I'm going to describe to you ladies this afternoon is a particular strain of malware out there called Marcher. Marcher, I am very familiar with because they have been targeting the Morgan Stanley mobile app as well as the other 40 largest American mobile banking apps for the last 3 years. Here's how Marcher works. Marcher starts by socially engineering you into downloading this malware onto your phone. Now, we all download apps, right? And when you download those apps, they want a lot from you, right? They're all asking for your location, access to your photos. They want access to your contacts. And we all make the mistake, right, of just clicking yes, yes, yes. And now that app has access to most of the stuff on our phones. That's what Marcher is hoping, is that you're going to give it access and then you're going to grant it lots of access on your phone. But of course, if we knew that Marcher was malicious, why would we ever download it onto our phones in the first place? Well, here's the trick. Marcher never presents itself as something bad. You know, it doesn't have a skull and crossbones on it. Instead, it's going to present itself to you as something benign, as something fun. Marcher is going to present itself as a game, as a social media platform. Lately, it's showing up as solitaire. So it's pretending to be a card game. You think you're downloading solitaire. Now you have this malware on your phone and you've granted it all of this access. The next thing it's going to do is wait for you to access your mobile banking app. So you're going to bring up the app that you use to log into your bank. And Marcher is going to detect on your phone that you've launched your mobile banking application. What it's going to do next is throw up an overlay on top of your mobile banking app that looks just like your mobile banking app. So same colors, same branding, completely identical, but of course commanded and controlled by the hackers on the back end, not by your bank. You don't know that you're looking at an overlay, and so you enter your username and password. Now my username and password is compromised, known to the hackers. But girls, it's actually what happens next that is most insidious. Because what is the hacker going to try to do with my username and password? He's going to try to log into my account on his device. But as we just discussed, you know, Morgan Stanley is going to detect that as a suspicious login. We're going to see this is not the device Rachel usually logs in from. It's not her IP address. It's not the location she usually comes from. And the time of day, right, is totally off. This doesn't look like Rachel. And so what do we do when we detect that suspicious, anomalous login? Well, we're going to prompt it with that additional factor of authentication, like we just described. So we're going to send a one-time passcode. You guys have all gotten those like 6-digit text message, codes that you've got to enter to prove that you are who you say you are. So the hacker's my bank is going to send one to my phone. But what's the problem in this case? The hacker's on my phone. And because I gave him all this access, he has access to my text message queue. He can pull out that text message my bank just sent, that 6-digit code, use it to meet my bank's authentication challenge. Now he's in my account. He's off to the races committing fraud in my account. He can actually go back to my phone, delete that text message. I never even know I was prompted. I never even know someone attempted access to my account. Now, good news, at least I can tell you, as the banking sector, we've worked on this. I've spent 3 years on this now. Morgan Stanley clients have not lost a single dollar of fraud to this particular form of malware, largely because this is a big part of what my team does, right? We detect these threats in the environment and we build the countermeasures to protect our users, our clients. In this case, it was a bunch of back-end analytics that look for this kind of anomalous activity. And it was further hardening our mobile application to resist this overlay technique so that we can't, and our clients can't fall victim to this. So if nothing else, girls, this gives you a sense of what a day in the life looks like. In the morning, I could be worrying about North Korea. Middle of the day, I'm worried about cyber criminals somewhere on the other end of the earth. By the end of the day, I'm worrying about our client who maybe is her own worst enemy, right? She's using the same login and password everywhere all the time, and she's putting herself, her assets, her data at risk. So that's kind of a day in the life. What I would tell you is that at the end of the day, my team, we view our jobs as making sure that every system, every network, every application that we field to our employees and to our clients is as time-tested, hacker-proofed, battle-hardened as possible before we put it in their hands. My team is mostly made up, no surprise, of people who worked with me and for me at the NSA, also professional hackers. We now have more than 30 of us former NSA hackers at Morgan Stanley, all of us thinking like an adversary. Who would be coming after us? What would they be doing? What would they be looking for? How can we play this cat and mouse game to stay one step ahead of them? But I want to rewind here for a second. So I've told you about how much fun my previous life was, how much fun my current job is. But I need to tell you a little bit about what that transition was like, because I'm making it sound like it's all, spies and heroes, and it is. But there are also, as we discussed, there are going to be points in your career where you make a decision that is really, really scary. And you can imagine for me, after 15 years in government, 15 years living in the black box that was the National Security Agency, I came home and told my then 13-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old son that I had quit my safe, secure, comfortable, and really great job in the government, and that we were going to sell our house in suburban Maryland and we were going to move to Manhattan and I was going to work for a bank. You all have been 13-year-old girls. I too have been a 13-year-old girl. You can imagine how my daughter felt about this. I hate you, Mom. You're ruining my life. I'm going to have to leave all my friends, my comfortable school. I'm afraid of living in a city. I don't want to transition. This is just the worst possible time. She was very, very unhappy. And of course, no mom likes it, right? When kids are unhappy. My son, I'll be honest, he didn't so much care. I think it's a boy thing, right? Boys, you just kind of wind them up and they go and then they come back. But my daughter was really, really concerned and unhappy about this. So we went through the process. But I have to tell you, for me, I went a few months ahead of them. So my husband, saint that he is, stayed behind in Maryland so they could finish out the school year. And I moved to New York, essentially by myself, and started a job in a sector that I had precisely no experience in. All of you will get to have that joyous moment at some point in your careers where you show up and you spend the first week kind of figuring out, like, where is my office? Where is the ladies' room? How do I eat? For me, it's like, where's the coffee, right? But at that point, I was the alone and unafraid, right? The first head of cybersecurity for Morgan Stanley's wealth management business. But I honestly had absolutely no idea what that meant. So I went to my boss, the guy who had hired me, and said, Chris, I've been here a week and a half. I know where the ladies' room is now. What would you like me to do? And he basically said, Rachel, just keep us safe. I got to tell you, that was not the most helpful guidance, right? I didn't know what I was keeping us safe from. And I hearkened back to something my daughter had said to me when she was 5, where she came home from school and said, Mom, at school today, I told everyone what you do at work. This is when I was working at the NSA. And I'm thinking to myself, I sure hope you didn't tell them what I do at work, because you're not supposed to know what I do at work. And you're certainly not supposed to be telling other people about it. Okay, Grace, what did you tell your kindergarten classmates that Mommy does at work? She says, well, I told them that you keep us safe. Okay, that's fair. Well, Grace, what is it that you think I keep you safe from? She says, well, I said bees and sharks. I assume you're very focused on bees and sharks, which was perfect, right? So my daughter, for the first 10 years of her life, thought I had sort of a bees and sharks defense mission. That was great. She now has a better sense of what all of that meant. But having to, make this transition and come to a place where, once again, I was being told, keep us safe, and had no idea what that meant. Now, in time, I figured it out, but there's a lesson for all of you young women in this. And it's that the more senior you become, the more the expectation is going to be that you got to figure it out for yourself, that no one is going to give you a template. No one's even going to give you a job description. They're going to expect that you just know in a world that is very ambiguous, what is the right thing and how to be spending your time and how to figure it out. Now, I hired a really smart team, and I built a lot of relationships, and I earned my credibility in a place that, we should talk about this. I can tell you, women in technology, you already know this. We are 25% of the technology workforce, not where we need to be. In cybersecurity, it's less than half that. We're 12% of the cybersecurity workforce. And when you layer in financial services on top of that, I can tell you the four of us know each other really well, and that is not where we want to be. So expanding the ranks of women in technology and in cybersecurity in particular, something I am incredibly passionate about, but it's also occasionally a lonely space. And it's also a space where I spend far more time than I personally feel I should have to at justifying my existence and earning my credibility. Whereas what I would be honest in telling you is that a lot of my male colleagues can simply walk in the room and every assumption is made. That's reality, right? We can't control for everyone else's unconscious bias. We have to live with the hand, play the cards that were dealt. And so for me, that has meant getting, frankly, really good at establishing my credibility in a large group of men as quickly as possible so that we can move on to real work, as opposed to everyone kind of doubting, who's this cyber chick and why is she here? That kind of thing. All right. So with that, I have done a lot of talking. I would really like to take this conversation anywhere you all would like to go. I know some of you, this is the first thing you're hearing out of the gate today. Others of you apparently had a wonderful time learning about hardware, and I would love to talk about hardware if anybody else wants to continue that conversation. But anything you all want to talk about. So I'm happy to talk about cybersecurity, technology, how you sort of make life work when we're all really busy and stressed. Any place you would like to take this conversation. This time is yours.
Okay, I'm looking at, we have some, I don't have a hand raise here. So yes, I do see people using their icons. Yay. I've got Anushka. You have a question.
So if I wanted to pursue cybersecurity, what kind of degrees would I have to take and stuff?
So that is a great question. And what I'm really looking for, twofold. One, I'm looking for someone with a broad technology background. So of course, I want to see some object-oriented programming, but I also want to see work at the network layer. This is why I think it's great that you guys are having hardware conversations. I really want someone who can work the full technology stack, who understands what application security means. So you guys, maybe another piece of homework, look up the OWASP top 10. So there's a group looks at the top 10 vulnerabilities that we see in applications year over year. These are things like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. I want someone who is well-versed in the OWASP top 10 and how to prevent and mitigate application layer vulnerabilities. Then I want someone who understands it at the desktop layer, right? So when that new Windows patch comes out, is this one a real doozy? Do I need to, and I do this once in a while and it really gets me in trouble. You guys probably saw the patch that came out from Microsoft this patch Tuesday, right? So in July, if you haven't looked at it, I would strongly encourage you to. I got consumed for about 2 days digesting this patch, but it includes multiple vulnerabilities that have CVE scores. So these are the people that score vulnerabilities at a 10, and a 10 is as bad as it can get, right? These are remote code execution and privilege escalation vulnerabilities. They are really bad news. And so when that kind of vulnerability is disclosed, which is really what a patch is, right? So you guys know you get patches all the time. My iPhone friends, right? Like Apple is sending you, first it was 11 and then it was 12 and then it was 13 and now we've all advanced to 13.1.5, yes? Those updates that Apple and Google and Microsoft are always sending you, those updates are patches. They contain the fixes to all of the latest vulnerabilities that all software manufacturers are always discovering. When that patch comes out, we enter into a race condition with the hackers. That's the problem, right? For us, that patch is the solution to the security vulnerability we didn't even know we had. No one knew. But for the hackers, that patch is an opportunity. What the hackers will do is reverse engineer the patch, discover the underlying vulnerabilities that it mitigates, and then work to weaponize those vulnerabilities against all of us who have not yet patched. So if when Windows puts out that patch and I look at it and say, oh boy, this could be bad, what am I then going to my boss and saying? I'm saying, hey, I want to reboot every single computer in the entire firm right now, like not tonight, not over the weekend. And of course he looks at me like I'm crazy, like, Rachel, we're right in the middle of the trading day. But then when I explain to him what might happen if we don't patch quickly, especially if I start to see proof of concept exploits in the wild for those vulnerabilities, then it's a full stop, right? So, but this point being, like, desktop layer vulnerabilities want someone who understands Windows operating system, Mac OS, Linux, any of them. That's really important to me. Then at the network layer, people who understand packets, who can look for devices behaving on the network in a way that they shouldn't. I mean, you think about this. How would I try to get into a Morgan Stanley branch office? Well, I'd go in and I'd just plug something on the network, right? That would be easy enough. Am I able to detect that? Do I know that all of my desktops are behaving like desktops, that my printers are behaving like printers? So someone who understands what network traffic looks like, that's critically important to me. I want some background, at least in encryption, cryptography. All of us should have that at this point. But most important, and girls, I tell you this like from a deep place, the most important thing that I'm looking for in anyone that I hire is actually not what you already know. Because the only thing I can guarantee you about what you already know is it's not what you need to know next year, right? This is moving so fast. Technology is moving so fast. We're in this cat and mouse game. What I'm really looking for is someone who is intellectually curious and loves to learn new things. Because again, what you learned a year ago, 2 years ago, not going to be next year's problem. I need to be able to come to you and say, you know, Shana, I know you have never worked Bluetooth protocol before, but guess what? You are now my Bluetooth expert. Go figure out how the Bluetooth protocol works and let me know if I've created any cyber risk as a result of enabling Bluetooth in my environment. That intellectual curiosity, that willingness to dive in and use this thing called the internet to learn new stuff, that is far and away more important to me than anything you will study in college.
Thank you. That is such good information. And that applies in almost any field, actually, not just cybersecurity. So another question, we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. And then I have to talk to the PM girls and we'll have to say goodbye to the AM girls until tomorrow morning. But if you have a question, please come off or start your video so we can see you.
Raneem has a question.
Okay.
Raneem?
I have a question. So if I were to download any app that wasn't like really known, is there any way to figure out if putting your login information is safe?
A really good question. So a couple of things with your apps. First and foremost, the most important thing to do is to only be downloading apps from your designated app store. So if you're an iPhone user, that means only from the App Store. If you're an Android user, that means only from Google Play, not from third-party app stores, not from websites, not from pop-ups, not from links in text messages or emails. All of those apps that are sold in third-party stores are much more likely to be malicious, much more likely to be Marcher, like we talked about today, than the apps that have been curated in your designated app store. Those are almost invariably safe. Then you're going to take that next step of only giving that app the permissions it truly needs. Girls, I tell you this again from my heart, no good will come from giving an app access to your photos if it does not need access to your photos. That is only going to end badly. And then it's being conscientious also, Raneem, about how and where you charge your mobile device. I don't want any of you using publicly available charging cords or publicly available USB ports like the ones you use in airports. This is the Uber driver who says, hey, want to charge your phone using my cord? The answer is always no. That data connection into your phone can be used to either silently exfiltrate the data off of your phone or to inject malware onto your phone. You want to carry your cord, your power supply, so that you are not having to use other people's cords.
Other questions? One more. Yes, Isabella.
This was more of a comment, but as far as passwords go, you could just get the first letter of each word in the line, in your favorite line from your favorite movie, and then just put your favorite symbol after it.
So Isabella, I like that suggestion a lot, but what I'll tell you I like even more is anyone here today using a password manager app? So these are things like LastPass and Dashlane, Keeper, 1Password. They're very inexpensive. And what they do, Isabella, is what you just described, but at algorithmic scale. So what these password manager apps will do is they'll actually create for you unique complex passwords for all of your logins. And then they'll store those passwords for you in a cryptographically sound way. So in an encrypted state in their secure cloud. Then when you need to access your password, it'll auto fill right into that password field for you. You don't even have to remember the password. But the thing that so things I like, right? Unique passwords, no more kittens 25 for every login. They're gonna give you a maximally lengthy and complex password. So if it's a 50-character password field, they're gonna give you a 50-character password, random alphanumerics that we as human beings could never generate ourselves. And they're gonna store that password for you safely. And it's actually this storage that is most important. Any of you young women today who are storing your passwords file as a notes file on your phone, and then using the Uber driver's charging cord, right? You see what I'm saying? That's a toxic combination. We don't want to be storing our passwords in Word documents or Excel files on our home computer. We want to, and we certainly don't want them on the Post-it note under the keyboard. We want to be storing our passwords securely. And that's why these password manager apps can be a great way, Isabella, of doing exactly what you just described with the benefit of computer intelligence behind them.
We'll take one more. Yes, Sophie.
So I just wanted to quickly ask how your job has changed through COVID-19 and quarantine, since your job is primarily like an online cybersecurity job.
So this is a really, really good question. And I would tell you that I think my job has gotten significantly harder over the last few months. And the reason I say this is because what we're seeing, in addition to the coronavirus pandemic, which obviously is having health implications and societal implications, but is also having significant cyber implications. We are in the midst of what I'm now calling a cyber crime pandemic on top of everything else. And I say this because we've seen a 40% increase in cybercrime since the beginning of the pandemic. And what this really is coming down to is hackers taking advantage of all of the concern and fear and dissettle that we feel as a result of the pandemic, and they're using it against us and trying to socially engineer us. So we're seeing all kinds of things like campaigns of spam going out there advertising coronavirus vaccines and other things that don't even exist, but they're trying to get you in a spirit of fear. They're manipulating you. And so we've seen a huge spike and increase in this kind of activity. And so it's really made my job harder because, of course, I've got to protect our clients from themselves, and they're the ones reading these emails and getting very concerned. The two other issues that we've seen a huge amount of cyber fraud around, the first has been around fraudulent charities. So this is particularly heartbreaking. Imagine the fraudster who sets up a charity designed to help coronavirus victims and their families, first responders, medical personnel, but in reality, it's not a charity at all. They're just siphoning off money from people who are trying to do good things. That has really upset me. And we've also seen huge volumes of fraud around all of the congressional stimulus packages. So, people filing for uninsurance, for unemployment benefits in other people's names. There've just been a ton of opportunities these last few months. And so, yes, it's been a rough 4 months. I think we've been working around the clock, just trying to make sure that this doesn't get worse.
Well, we are so appreciative of you having been here. And if we have any more questions, I hope that I will group them together and send them to you so that we can get a response back from you. But this was
Absolutely.
so awesome, not just for the girls, but also for me and for some of my fellow coaches that are helping out in the rooms. So thank you so much for all that. For the girls who are in the AM session, so this is the end of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you in the morning. We'll talk a little bit about this in the morning, but I want you to think before we end the day about what kinds of epic fails you can recall from the day today. And we're going to see whoever has the best epic fail tomorrow morning from today's session gets to be in a drawing for a prize from me. So we are going to look for who is going to have, and it'll be a thumbs up kind of thing tomorrow morning to see who had the best epic fail. So please get ready to share those with me. And the link for the afternoon girls is in the, the link for the afternoon girls is in the chat box. So you can just click that and it should take you into the waiting room. And when you get there, please follow the instructions. It will help us get you into your correct breakout rooms as soon as possible. So once again, Rachel, thank you so much, and we will be in touch. And girls, what do you say? Heart, heart, heart. We loved it. We all thought it was awesome. Oh, hang on, I'm taking a picture. Give me a second here. Let me just grab that camera. Capture. Here we go. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Heart, heart, heart. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Be well.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Bye now. Don't forget to check in PM session.